Today we're front porching with Miss Carolyn Lofton. In just a couple of sentences, tell us who you are.
Lover of all things. That's the first thing that comes out of my mouth. But like just a person that gives grace because I can recognize the grace that God has given me. Crafty, creative. There's just a bunch of different things that I can say. So I haven't like honed myself into.
Here's my elevator pitch for myself.
Yeah.
Right.
And I totally suck at it.
Well, that's fine, because that just shows and demonstrates the humility you have, because you're not focused on like what am this is me concisely, because God is continuing to shift and shape and mold you.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. How long you been a part of the Churchill community, and what brought you here?
Wow. Whew. So I have been touching Churchill and living on and off since 1992. I moved here when I was 9, and this was actually like the neighborhood around about that my mother grew up in, between here and Southside. What brought me back here for good was the fact that my mother was very sick, and I knew I wanted my kids to know who she was, because she was fairly sick after I turned 12 up until the day she died. And so they didn't have, like, they knew they had a grandmother, but they never really spent a lot of time with her. And I knew that the doctors were saying, like, they didn't know how long she was going to be living. And so I was like, well, let's move up there so that they can get a chance to know her. So that's what originally brought me back, because I've always been terrified of Richmond, which is crazy, because I grew up in Columbus, Georgia, which is a small town with a mixture of people. You could find Asian, Filipino, Hispanic, Black, white, all kind of blended into the same neighborhoods. When I got here, it was predominantly Black, and I didn't know what to think of that, because I literally had never been around that much of a concentration of Black people. And so I was scared and didn't know if Richmond was for me. But when I came back, I saw that the dynamics had changed. I remember before I left, I was about 13, and like over in the Chimborazo area, like we couldn't go certain places without having somebody with us. And so when I came back to visit, I just saw like the guys weren't on the corners anymore, and it wasn't as evident of the drug trafficking anymore. And so I saw like a change of like neighbors actually caring for each other. I remember when I first moved into my house, like my neighbor helped us move stuff into the house, and she was a Black lady. It was like, oh, this is the neighborhood that I can be in, because, this person isn't saying, oh, well, that's not my business, I'm not going to help them. Like, they clearly need help. There's 2 of them and a whole bunch of kids. I can help in some little way, whether it's carrying in a blanket for you or what have you. And so that was the thing that kind of told me that I wanted to stay and see what, Richmond was all about.
Entering into the community again, at what point did you feel like, in terms of community development, that's something that you wanted to have kind of a hand in?
Well, a few years back, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I went back to school. And before I went back to school, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I used to participate a lot at the school because we lived right behind Chimborazo, so I could just walk up there and hang out with with my kids that were in school. And I saw other parents there, but it wasn't like, oh, we worked together on this project, we're leaving, I'm gonna see you later. It was like intentional, hey, how are you doing? How's school going? Is there anything that we can help you with? By the way, do you want to go to church? Like, is this, like that relational piece of, there's more than just, I'm gonna smile in your face today, I'm gonna go home and I won't think about you again. Like, when someone can come to you and say, I remember you were telling me XYZ, how is that going? And that means that you really care about me, you really think about me. And so it just made me start thinking about the way I did neighboring in specific. And so I started hanging out with my elder neighbor that had moved in next door. And that just by me befriending her and helping her in ways that she couldn't help herself. And she in turn helped me in ways that I couldn't help myself, and I never anticipated it. And so that's what prompted me to start working at J. Sergeant Reynolds as a PAL, which is a peer academic leader, where you help other students try to navigate the system of starting school and just figuring out things that they never had to think about before. Because of my work with that and just a general zest to want to help people, that's what prompted me to learn more about Urban Hope and apply for the position at Urban Hope. And it's like I fall in love with community development more and more every day. Like, like I was saying earlier, I have been learning a lot about community land trusts and things like that, of how we can help each other. And so, like, my job is the reason why I love community development so much more today than I did before.
Oof. Tell us a little bit more about Urban Hope for those who are not familiar, and then from there, talk about what sorts of things are happening, a part of that organization that are unprecedented or new, or things that are just like coming up that people should know about.
So Urban Hope is a faith-based affordable housing program. They're a nonprofit organization that is just really looking to seek shalom in the neighborhood. We want everyone to experience the good with the bad, but more so the good, and be able to just rest easy knowing that they don't have to get put out the next day because they're not scratching and scrambling to pay a rent that's too high in the first place, and getting tangled into a web of just not knowing whether they're going to be able to buy groceries or pay their rent, or if they're going to have enough money to buy their kid a birthday present because their rent is far beyond what they should be paying in relation to what they get in income. Urban Hope has a lot of things that are coming up as far as like urban neighbor houses opening up, people who are highly invested in Church Hill, who want to walk alongside residents to make sure that they prosper, to pray for them when they're not around, to eat with them, break bread with them on a regular basis, and really intentionally get to know them beyond the hi and bye of opening my door and going to the car or walking to the bus stop. We're also looking at community land trusts and what that means to take the land out of the deal of the purchase of a house to make it affordable to folks who wouldn't otherwise have it to buy a home plus land, because we all know the wealth is in the land. And so what a community land trust does is it allows a nonprofit to govern that land so that the house doesn't get ridiculous. A $79,000 house should not be selling for $200,000. And that's just point blank and period. And that's just some conversations that we're having. We didn't start it, but we've been key players at the table and trying to think about the residents versus, just trying to seek control.
That's right. Do you think that in the Churchill community that we are seeing more people who have grown up in the neighborhood become more knowledgeable and empowered?
Well, there's always ample opportunity for empowerment and knowledge. I just think about one of our residents who was born and raised in Church Hill. Like, every day I see her, I see more and more of her awareness and understanding of what's going on and the need for a change in the neighborhood, a shift of awakening. Even when we conquer 75% of the neighborhood, we're not done. There's still that 25% that we have to conquer, and quite frankly, we're not at the 75%. But I'm very hopeful, and I have a lot of faith that God is going to blanket this area and bring us exactly where we need to be. The fact that Urban Hope just hosted a community conversation at the Robinson Theater where people were able to voice situations and things that concern them without being at each other's throats, getting on the same page, being enlightened about gentrification and what gentrification is, that to me in itself was a victory for our side, but there's still so much more that we can be doing.
What I'm hearing a lot of which is wonderful, is the fact that there is this individual relationship element that is key to an actual transformation of the community.
Oh yeah. My neighbors have become my family. Me and my kids, we often joke about having family by blood and family by love. And like, I can honestly say, on this block alone, I have so many family members of love, but there's a set of folks that I call like my husband and wife and my kids, and they walk alongside you. That individual intentional relationship actually helped me in a situation where I could not afford where I lived, even though I have a huge family that had that need. If it wasn't for my family by love, I don't know what would have been our outcome of the situation. I think about the aspect of what it is to be a neighbor, and then how it relates to community development is like a marriage. Because a lot of times you might have family that live in the same city, but they don't necessarily live on the same block. So who is your next relative? Your neighbor, the person that's right beside you. And my neighbors where I used to live across the street really kind of surrounded my family and loved on us even when we didn't realize we needed that love. And that was like a really awesome just realization of how much people will go to be uncomfortable themselves and love on a whole nother family. For a family of 4 to take in a family of 6 is absolutely crazy. But I think about the time that we were there and how we just made it work. It was like where 2 people were wrestling with dinner with 7 kids, and one person was getting the other half of the crew ready for bed. Like, it was just a well-oiled machine, a marriage of, just understanding and trust that we have each other's best interests at heart. And I think that's the best thing that could have ever happened to me individually, and how it has impacted me to think about how I help other people, just not even realizing that I have been putting up a wall against other folks.
Yeah.
As I think about it now, it's like I had said to someone the other day that I had a problem with realizing that I needed help or accepting help. And in that sentence, I had a revelation, because that meant that I was internalizing that something was wrong with me because I needed help, but not realizing that I can be shown the good in God by receiving the help. And it was just, that has been like the statement of my week that has just told me, like, we have to be vulnerable. We have to allow ourselves to step out and ask for help, because that one small cry for help can mean a lot. Like this house, that one small cry for help actually landed me in a place where I can actually afford to live here, and my kids can experience the neighborhood that I've experienced and all the beauty of the historical aspects of the neighborhood. But we don't have to worry about how is our bills going to be paid this week. Are we going to be able to get the basic essentials that we need, or is everything going to have to go to rent and utilities? And that's like, you can breathe easy when you don't have to think about those things. And that's how, like, just the investment, the intentional investment in someone and not treating them like a charity case and saying, hey, I care about you. I don't care about your situation, because by normal standards, my friends and family and love should not be friends. And I think that's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Yes. So letting go and letting God, it's something that people say, and it's something that when it actually permeates your experiences, your life experiences, and it becomes a personal revelation, it's something that is so relieving, because you realize
that's
you realize just how who was that again?
That was Kate.
I could not recognize
that was Kate. That's my family.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
My cheerleader.
You gotta tell her, fam, you messed up that interview, or you caused a great moment. I don't know. But yeah, letting God manifest himself. It's like we sometimes don't identify that as part of his ability to work. And then when we open ourselves to that, it's like, oh my gosh, God, this is how you created us. It's the most beautiful thing ever. We wanna just learn about a little bit about how you were brought to Unbound RVA and kind of what God has been doing through the business that he has kind of manifested.
Actually, the crazy part about Unbound was that that same family from Love received information that they were looking for people and encouraged me to fill out an application and go through the program. And they have been like my biggest cheerleaders moving through the program. So Unbound RVA is a nonprofit that seeks potential in unexpected places. They really go out into the low-income neighborhoods and get out what is perceived the best of the best. 40 some odd people apply for the program. 12 were chosen, and out of the 12, 5 were picked to start their business. It was a 6-week workshop of just learning yourself and understanding what your values are, and just believing in yourself. And it was an awesome experience. There were tons of highs and lows and realizations of just myself and who I am and what I want to do. And out of that birthed the Crafty Peacock, which is it's a custom gift basket service. And I had a phenomenal first year. I really enjoyed, working with the folks I worked with and doing some of the baskets. I had a chance to do a Walking Dead survival kit, which was like awesome because I'm a big Walking Dead fan. So, it took me a lot of places, as well as working with Shelter in Arms and doing welcoming gift bags for the folks in their extended stay programs, which that is just, it's really awesome. But during the first year, I realized that wasn't the way that I feel like God is calling me to help. There's definitely another way that God is calling me to help, and I'm still trying to navigate that process. And I think that Urban Hope has a lot to do with that, because my passion lies with the people, the broken, the people who can't stand for themselves, who needs that compassion in a time of just really strong hurt and sorrow, and just a time where you want to give up. Like, I think about some of our residents that we have at Urban Hope that they have utility situations that are out of this world. Like, the utility companies are taking advantage, and they're stuck with these bills that they can't think to pay. So it's like a sense of hopelessness. And my prayer and hope is that Crafty Peacock will one day morph into something that will be more beneficial to the least of these, and not just what it is now.
When you look back at your life and see how your children are going to grow up being empowered members of the community who are movers and shakers as well, how do you feel like their life experiences and the things that they're going to become kind of differ from yourself?
Well, for one thing, they're going to grow up not wondering what they're going to be, but what problems they're going to solve and who they're going to help, how the things that they do are going to impact other people, how they can be a blessing to other people. But most importantly, they'll walk through their neighborhood with confidence, knowing that they're safe, knowing that they know mostly everyone in the community, and they, on any given block, if they ever run into trouble, there's always someone there that they know. Just having that sense of being wrapped in God's arms and being safe wherever they go, like, that's what community is to me. I think about my time in Georgia. If my mom wasn't home, the lady next door took us. I would sit at her table and drink chocolate milk and wait for my mom to get off of work. And I've already experienced that. Like, one of my kids were dropped off at a bus stop that she was unfamiliar, and thankfully, like, someone we knew lived close by to the bus stop, and she wasn't outside all alone and scared. Like, they found her while she was on the porch crying, and that's a memory that she's going to remember. because she's going to intentionally get to know the person that lives next door to her. If she doesn't already know them, she's going to do it with a purpose, because she knows what it feels like to feel like you have no one, to be lost. And when you're lost, the thing that gets you from being lost is that familiar face that kind of says, hey, come on, hang with me until, it's time to go. And that's the awesome part of what they're seeing right now, is that I don't have to be mean to my neighbors. I can love them and, still be who I am, even if they're different from me.
Wow. what we can be praying for, and how can we orient our prayers in light of everything that we have just said?
Just praying for urban hope as we explore other ways to get folks in housing a lot more diligently. For my family, just for that sense of togetherness, to continue to reign with us. We got snow a few weeks back, and everybody's like at each other's throats. So that would be awesome. And not that we don't love each other. It's just like, hey, I've been cooped up with you a lot longer than I like to be.
Preach.
No, Urban Hope is actually venturing to the NCRC conference next month. And so just for God to open up that space for dialogue and education and just pretty hopeful things that we can bring back to our community to make it better.
Yes, well, thank you so much for meeting with us here today. It has been a blessing to be able to talk with you. And so we will definitely be standing in agreement and definitely be alongside of you. So thank you so much.
Take a little moment just to breathe. Open up your ears and allow your heart to listen to the whisper that carries through the ages. Heaven's revelation, simplified equation. Love God, love yourself, love your neighbors.